You open your phone without thinking, not because you're bored, not because you're curious. It's almost automatic. Your thumb moves before your mind does. You scroll and scroll and scroll. A video, a joke, a clip, a face. Another life, another opinion, another moment that isn't yours. And for a few seconds, something lights up inside you. Not happiness, not excitement, just relief. Relief from being alone with your own thoughts. But the moment you put the phone down, the feeling comes back. That hollow pressure in your chest. That quiet sense that something is missing, even though you can't name what it is. You've been scrolling for hours, yet somehow, nothing stayed. And that's the part that scares you. Because you didn't feel sad while scrolling. You didn't feel angry. You didn't feel anything at all. Just numb. And now you're wondering why. Most people think scrolling emptiness is about addiction. They say it's dopamine, they say it's attention span, they say it's laziness, but that explanation never really fits. Because if this was just boredom, entertainment would satisfy you. If this was just distraction, you'd feel better afterward. But you don't. You feel emptier than before, and that's because you're not scrolling to feel good. You're scrolling to avoid feeling something else. There was a time when silence didn't feel dangerous, when being alone didn't immediately trigger discomfort, when your mind wasn't a place you needed to escape from. But at some point, silence stopped feeling neutral. It started feeling heavy. And instead of asking why, you learned how to fill it. Scrolling became the easiest way to disappear without actually leaving. No commitment, no vulnerability, no emotional risk, just endless input so you don't have to listen to what's happening inside. And the reason this works so well is because scrolling doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't ask who you are. It doesn't ask what you want. It doesn't ask what you're avoiding. It just keeps you busy. But your nervous system knows the difference. Your body knows when it's being nourished and when it's being sedated. That emptiness you feel afterward isn't random. It's the result of being overstimulated and underfulfilled at the same time. You consumed hundreds of emotions that weren't yours. You reacted to stories you're not part of. You watched people live while you stayed still. And somewhere along the way, your own inner signal got quieter. Not because you lost it, but because it was drowned out. This is why nothing feels memorable anymore. Why days blur together. Why time feels like it's moving fast but going nowhere. Your mind is full, but your inner world is starving. And here's the part most people don't realize. The emptiness isn't caused by scrolling. Scrolling is a response to emptiness that existed before. Long before the phone, long before the apps, there was already a gap between how you feel and how you're expected to feel, a gap between who you are and who you had to become. Somewhere earlier in your life, you learned that your inner world wasn't something to stay with. Maybe emotions weren't welcomed. Maybe being still meant being judged. Maybe your needs were ignored unless you were performing, achieving, or behaving correctly. So you adapted. You learned to stay occupied. You learned to stay distracted. You learned to stay externally engaged so you didn't have to sit with unmet feelings. Scrolling didn't create that pattern. It perfected it. Because now, you never have to pause long enough to feel what's unresolved. And unresolved feelings don't disappear. They wait. They show up as restlessness, as that strange emptiness that hits when the screen goes dark. You might notice it most at night, when the world quiets down, when there's nothing left to consume. That's when the urge to scroll gets strongest, not because you want content, but because you don't want contact with yourself. The irony is, scrolling promises connection, but delivers isolation. You see people constantly, but you don't feel seen. You hear voices all day, but no one is speaking to what you're actually experiencing, so your system stays on high alert, waiting for something that never comes. And over time, this creates a specific kind of emptiness. Not dramatic, not obvious, a dull emptiness, a background emptiness, the kind that makes life feel flat even when things are fine. You might still laugh, still function, still go through the motions, but something feels muted. And that's because scrolling trains your brain to experience life in fragments, short bursts, quick hits, constant novelty. Real meaning doesn't work like that. Meaning requires presence, continuity, depth, and awkward instead of peaceful. Why being alone with no stimulation feels unbearable? Your system has learned that stillness equals exposure. Exposure to thoughts you haven't processed, feelings you postponed, questions you avoided. So you scroll again and again and again. Not because you're weak, but because avoidance once kept you safe. At some point, distraction was a survival strategy. But survival strategies don't automatically stop when they're no longer needed. They keep running, even when they start costing you something. And what scrolling costs you isn't time, it's contact with yourself. Every hour spent absorbing noise is an hour you don't hear your own signal. Every night spent scrolling is a night your nervous system never truly rests. That's why you wake up tired even after sleeping. That's why motivation feels distant. That's why joy feels muted. Your system is overstimulated and underattended, and the emptiness you feel is your inner world asking for something real. Not more content, not more stimulation, but space. Space to feel without immediately escaping, space to notice without judging, space to reconnect with sensations that aren't optimized, edited, or fast. This doesn't mean deleting apps or changing your entire life overnight. That's not how this works. The emptiness isn't asking for discipline. It's asking for honesty. Honesty about what you're avoiding. Honesty about what you haven't allowed yourself to feel. Honesty about how disconnected you've become from your own internal rhythm. Because the truth is, the emptiness isn't inside the phone. It shows up after you put it down, and it stays, patiently, until you stop running from it. Not to fight it, not to fix it, but to finally listen. When you do, you might notice something surprising. The emptiness isn't infinite. It's specific. It has a shape, a tone, and it's been trying to reach you for a long time. Through the silence you avoid, through the scrolling you repeat, through the numbness you can't explain. Scrolling fills time, but only presence fills emptiness. And the moment you stop numbing long enough to feel what's underneath, the emptiness doesn't disappear. It transforms. Because what you were calling emptiness was actually unmet connection, unexpressed emotion, unacknowledged self. And it was never asking for more content. It was asking for you. You might have noticed something strange. Even when you're not scrolling, your mind still feels restless. As if it's waiting for the next hit, the next distraction, the next thing to pull you out of yourself. That's because scrolling didn't just become a habit. It rewired how your mind relates to reality. When stimulation is constant, your inner world loses volume. Not instantly, slowly, quietly. At first, it just feels like mild boredom, then like restlessness, then like emptiness. And one day you wake up realizing you don't feel deeply connected to anything anymore. Not people, not goals, not even yourself. This is the part people don't talk about. Scrolling doesn't just steal attention, it fragments identity. You start experiencing life as an observer instead of a participant, watching others live, watching others feel, watching others become, and without noticing, you stop asking yourself important questions. What do I want? What matters to me? What am I actually feeling right now? Because those questions don't fit into a fast-moving feed, so they get postponed, again and again, until your inner voice becomes unfamiliar. And when you can't hear yourself clearly, emptiness isn't far behind. This emptiness feels different from sadness. Sadness has weight. Sadness has direction. Emptiness feels flat, undefined, like emotional static. You're not hurting, but you're not alive either. And that's often more disturbing than pain, because pain at least tells you something matters. Emptiness makes you wonder if anything does. That's why scrolling feels safer than stillness, because stillness confronts you with that question, and your system isn't ready to answer it yet. You might notice how uncomfortable it feels to sit without stimulation. No phone, no music, no background noise, your body gets tense, your thoughts speed up, you feel an urge to escape. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. Your nervous system learned that quiet moments are when unresolved things surface. So it tries to protect you by keeping you occupied. This is also why productivity advice doesn't work here, why motivation videos don't land, why forcing yourself to do more only increases the emptiness, because the issue isn't lack of action, it's lack of internal contact. You've been consuming meaning instead of creating it, absorbing emotion instead of expressing it, watching intimacy instead of experiencing it, and over time, that creates a deep mismatch inside you. Your brain is busy, your emotions are underused, your inner world feels ignored. So it sends a signal, emptiness, not as punishment, but as feedback, a signal that says something essential is missing. And here's the uncomfortable truth. What's missing isn't motivation. It isn't discipline. It isn't purpose. It's presence. Presence with discomfort. Presence with unfiltered thoughts. Presence with emotions that don't resolve quickly. Scrolling keeps you in a state of constant partial attention. Never fully here. Never fully gone. That in-between state is where emptiness thrives, because meaning doesn't emerge from fragments. It emerges from sustained contact. With a thought long enough to understand it, with a feeling long enough to feel it move, with a moment long enough to let it affect you. That's why everything feels shallow when your attention is scattered, not because life is shallow, but because you haven't been meeting it fully. And deep down, you know this. That's why the emptiness feels personal, why it doesn't go away with entertainment. Why it follows you even on good days. Your inner world isn't asking for stimulation. It's asking for acknowledgement, to be felt without being immediately fixed, to be noticed without being drowned out, to be taken seriously. This is also why you might feel an odd resistance to slowing down, as if something bad will happen if you stop. That fear didn't come from nowhere. At some point, slowing down meant facing feelings you didn't have support for, loneliness, confusion, anger, grief. So your system learned, keep moving. Scrolling is just the modern version of that strategy. But strategies that once protected you can quietly imprison you later, not dramatically, subtly, until one day you realize you don't remember the last time you felt deeply engaged with life, not excited, not entertained, engaged, and the emptiness becomes impossible to ignore. Here's the part most people misunderstand. You don't heal emptiness by filling it. You heal emptiness by letting it speak, because emptiness isn't nothing. It's compressed emotion, unlived experience, unexpressed self. When you stop numbing it, even briefly, it starts to change shape. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Then, unfamiliar. Then, revealing. You begin to notice what you actually miss, what you're actually craving, what you've been postponing. And it's rarely something external. It's usually something internal you haven't given space to yet. A part of you that wants to slow down. A part of you that wants depth instead of noise. A part of you that wants to feel real again, even if that means feeling uncomfortable first. This doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't happen dramatically. It happens in small moments. When you pause before reaching for your phone, when you let a feeling sit for a few seconds longer, when you notice the urge to escape and don't immediately obey it. Not to punish yourself, not to prove discipline, but to rebuild trust with your own inner experience, because emptiness isn't the absence of something. It's the result of too much distance from yourself, and the distance didn't appear overnight, so it doesn't close overnight either. But every moment of presence shortens it. Every time you choose to stay instead of scroll, even briefly, something shifts. The emptiness doesn't vanish, but it softens. It becomes clearer, more understandable, less threatening, and eventually, you realize something important. You were never empty. You were just unheard. And the moment you stop replacing yourself with constant noise, your inner world slowly starts responding again. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. in a way that feels real. And that quiet, once it stops being avoided, is no longer empty. It's alive.